and the journalists are just like, Hi, and welcome to Flo Talk. I am Kersti Flo, and here on my channel, I talk about my good and bad experiences with celebrity. But this episode is going to be a little bit different. I've been laughing so hard putting together this episode and doing the research for it because I find it so funny to actually reveal what journalists are like. Some of you have commented, there was a comment last week saying, not to be rude, but the same can be said about interviewers from the perspective of the actors and actresses. So it can go both ways as to who is being rude. And you are so right. There are so many crazy stories about how journalists behave in these situations, and I've witnessed quite a few of them myself. So first I wanted to just explain to you how this works. There are different scenarios when you interview celebrities. Sometimes there is a press conference where, you know, the talent is sitting in front of everyone on a table and being interviewed either by a moderator or people in the audience can ask questions. And then we usually like 20 to 40, 50 journalists sitting there like watching this, which is like something I rarely do because I don't feel them to be very interesting and you can't really make much of them sometimes. And then you have roundtables, which is basically when they put together a group of like 6 to 10 journalists, sometimes fewer, and a few times a little bit more. And they have the talents, the actors coming in and out of the different rooms. It's always in a hotel, a fancy hotel. So the journalists stay put in the room and then the actor will come in, sit down for about 20 minutes and then leave and go to the next room. And they always separate international and domestic press. So domestic press is here in the US, Americans basically. And international is everyone else. So on these roundtables, you meet journalists from all over the world with different backgrounds, different cultural codes, different sense of humor, and I don't know, very different kind of behavior, which I've seen in so many situations can get really, really awkward. So as I said before, I moved to New York in 2007, and that's when I started doing these type of interviews. The interviews I share on my channel are TV, one-on-one, or me interviewing several actors on camera. These interviews are not filmed, but you bring your own recorder, and there are not many rules to how this works. So you sit down and you just have to throw your question in there. And sometimes, or a lot of the times, there are journalists there with really like, you know, pushy personalities that would just take the time from everyone else, you know, be pretty rude. I remember in the beginning, I was terrified in those situations. First of all, I'm kind of shy, and in those situations in front of so many people, it makes me even more uncomfortable. And then you're in front of a big celebrity, and then you're sitting there thinking, oh, should I ask this question? Should I ask this question? And then when it's finally your time and you get a word in, it's over. And that happened to me so many times. And I have to say, some of these journalists, as you're saying, are rude. I also remember in the beginning, I was so shocked by all the big egos and the arrogance. I think it probably took 10 years almost before people started saying hello to me. Some of the people I met like on a weekly basis, and I was in the same round table with them, and they never said hello. I was like, what is going on? What is this kind of weird environment? It's such a strange world. Some of these journalists take so much space and they never let anyone else talk. And I remember I've been in a few situations, and I had to mention this last one, which was for Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. It was Brad Pitt and Leonardo DiCaprio. They were at a round table together, and I tried to get a question in so many times, and this other guy was just like pushing over and just kept talking over. And then Leonardo DiCaprio actually said, you know, she's been trying to ask a question for so long. Why don't you let her ask a question? And he's like, I think it's her time now. So that was very nice. That has happened a few times because some of these people are just ruthless and they just take over the whole interview and think that they're having a one-on-one with this person and letting everyone else just sit there. And if you're being polite and nice, you won't get anything, which is terrible. So back to your comment. Yes, journalists are rude. But in this episode, I wanted to share some of the moments that I found so hilarious. Some of them are like, I think they're rooted in cultural differences. So this first episode happened in 2009. It was for a movie called It's Complicated. And we had a round table. I don't remember how many people we were, maybe 6 or 7. And Meryl Streep and Steve Martin was in the movie and they arrived together. So they sat down together. And then this journalist from Russia asked this to Meryl Streep.
Russians have description for ideal wife. You need be chef in kitchen, diplomat in living room, and kitchen bedroom. You know. And
That's absolutely correct.
and your character was ideal woman and still have problem. I just curious, like, what else?
Well, I think she had I think she had a problem in that she was great in the kitchen, living room, and bedroom, but over 15 years, it wasn't great enough.
And the way she said it in front of Meryl Streep, I was like, oh my God. And then she followed up by saying that your character in this movie, she's all those things, but she still didn't keep the man. What was wrong? And yeah, Meryl tried to reply, as you could hear, and everyone was just looking at each other like, this is so absurd. So I feel like, to her defense, this journalist, she didn't feel like, she didn't mean to be offensive or anything, but, to ask Meryl Streep something like that, I just thought it was so funny. Okay, so this is another story that happened that I witnessed. It happened in New York in 2016. It was for the movie Suicide Squad, and we were interviewing Joel Kinnaman, and he just sat down, and I think we were just 4 people around that table. We were sitting in a couch, and he came in front of us and sat down. Sometimes I have to say, people get tired because you travel, you get jet lagged, and I think a lot of the times during screenings, like movie screenings, you see journalists sleep all the time, especially if you come from, far away, a different time zone. Of course, you're going to be tired at night. But anyways, this was during the day, and we sat there, and Joel Kinnaman was just talking and answering questions, and then he stopped, and he was just like, is she sleeping? There this woman was. I've seen this woman at so many junkets. I think she's Russian or Italian. I can't remember. She was a legend in the industry. Everyone knew who she was. And she tended to fall asleep. And she was just sleeping. And then he was like, oh. And then everyone was looking at her. She kept sleeping. And he was like, okay, this is so funny. I just have to take a picture. So he took up his phone and he took a photo of her. And then he was like, and he put it in his pocket. And then we continued the interview. And she woke up like 2 minutes before the interview was over. And she was just like pretending like nothing. And we were like, this is so funny. And the same woman, again, this was also a press conference with Steve Martin. And she'd got a new phone and she didn't know how to turn the sound off. So her phone started ringing in the middle of a press conference and she just sat there and everyone was like, are you going to take that or are you just going to turn it off? And she just let it ring and everyone was like, what the hell is going on? And she's like, I don't know how to turn it off. And we were like, well, maybe you should just leave your phone outside then if you don't know how to turn it off. And another time, I have to talk about this too because it was so funny. We were interviewing Chris Hemsworth, another roundtable. There were a bunch of different journalists there. And at the end of the interview, one of the journalists brought up this big poster and she was like, oh, can you sign this poster for me, please? And she put it in front of Chris Hemsworth and he was like, that's my brother. And she didn't even react to it. She was like, okay. And then he signed it like, I love my brother. And then Chris. It was a picture of Liam. I mean, yeah. And then another legendary moment with Keanu Reeves. I mean, I felt like he handled this so well. So there was a woman from some country, I think it was in Asia somewhere, I don't remember exactly. I don't want to point out any specific country here, but the question is the weirdest thing I've ever heard in my life. So she basically asked Keanu how he could play like an outer space alien when we know that he is Keanu Reeves.
You're famous, so do you feel like maybe it could be work as a disadvantage playing a character that is unknown species?
Are you saying is it a risk to play an alien?
Yeah, but did you feel like
Yes.
did you feel like maybe it's a tough job for you because everybody knows that you're Keanu and not really unknown species from up there.
Yeah.
It could be sometimes you show
Yes,
like
it could be intuitively suspect or cheesy.
I thought it and I saw the trailer.
It's called acting. He handled it, as I said, so well. He was like, well, yeah, you know, she was like, but you're a famous actor. We know you're Keanu Reeves. We know you're not an alien. How can you play an alien? Yeah. Another episode with Keanu Reeves as well. I don't know if it was the same roundtable. I don't remember. But this was also a woman with some Asian accent. And she asked Keanu Reeves what it was like to turn 44 without any context of like what it was like being, you know, in your 40s compared to 30s or whatever. I'll play it for you so you can hear it yourself.
And here we are.
So happy birthday.
Oh, thank you
Yeah,
very
happy
much.
belated birthday.
Do you feel any difference, like changes physically, or have your value changed since you become 44?
24.
Are we talking from like 30 to 44 or like from 43 to 44? If it's 43 to 44, nah, I'm pretty much the same. Yeah.
I think he answered that so well, like, you know, from 44 to 43 or from 30 to 40, or like, what do you mean? Oh my God. People are so funny without even knowing it sometimes. I remember there was a lady, she's definitely Italian and very well known among other journalists. And we were interviewing Julia Roberts at a roundtable, and she has this like very strong accent and speaks very slowly. And she has a specific look to her. And while she was asking Julia Roberts a question, Julia was like, I feel I'm getting my fortune told right now. Is it just me? That was so funny. But the Italian woman was not laughing. Another episode that wasn't that funny, it was just like terrifying for me. We were waiting to interview Antonio Banderas, and I was outside the room waiting. You know, when you're doing TV interviews, you sit in the hallway of the hotel. First, there's a hospitality suite where all the journalists are sitting waiting, where there's food and drinks and whatever. You can just sit and talk, and then you're on deck, which means that you have to sit outside the hotel room and wait for your turn to go in and interview the person that's sitting there. And I was up after this German news reporter, and she'd never done a press junket before, and she was like, okay, I'm gonna ask Antonio Banderas why he wants to do this shitty movie. And I was like, okay, don't ask it like that, because you will never get invited back if you ask that. I don't think that's very nice to ask him something like that. So I probably wouldn't do that. And she's like, I don't care. I'm here to do news, and that movie was horrible. It was SpongeBob, which is a kid's movie. But anyways, so I saw this other French journalist hanging out, and I was asking him, I'm like, do you want to go in before me? I have to go to the bathroom. I did not want to go after the German woman, so I didn't. And I went in after the French guy, and Antonio Banderas was lovely. He's such a nice guy. From my perspective, as I've told you so many times, these are all my experiences. I don't know anything about these people in their personal life. Okay, and finally, I wanted to mention this episode, which I think was so stupid. And it wasn't really the journalist's fault, but I was just witnessing this from the outside. I was sitting across the hallway from this guy who was interviewing Brie Larson. And he flew in all the way from Australia, and he was kind of like a comedic guy, and I don't know what show he was working for, but he came out of the room and he was just like acting a little weird, and then some publicists took him to the side, and she told him off basically, and said that he would not receive his interview and they would keep it, and he was being rude. And what had happened was that he had asked Brie Larson what it was like to be named after a cheese, Brie, and she didn't find that funny. So dumb. I'm like, why is that? I mean, that was so stupid. So poor guy, I felt really bad for him. I don't know, maybe he was trying to be funny in other ways. I don't know what really happened in there because I never saw the interview. I just heard this afterwards, what had happened, and that he had referred to her as cheese, that they were not having it. So he had to fly all the way back to Australia with no interview. Okay, so I meet journalists not only at these press events, but I also meet them at premiere parties and events here in Hollywood. And you would be shocked to see how people behave at these events, especially around food. Uh, when there's screenings, there's sometimes a reception afterwards. So there might be like you're screening the movie for a bunch of journalists, then you have a Q&A with the talents, the actors in the movie on stage afterwards, and then there's a reception where you get some food and wine. And sometimes, or a lot of the times, people are extremely hungry after these events. And then they start coming out with little plates with little food on it, and the journalists are just like, wow. I've seen situations where the waiters were just trying to run away with the trays, trying to escape, because there's always the same people that are the most hungry, you know, there's like 7 or 8 people just chasing the waiters. And this guy, he got so angry, one of the waiters, so he started running like different like loops around these people. And it was this whole kind of like, it was so interesting to watch. And I've seen waiters holding up burgers like this and like almost falling over because people are like just grabbing onto it. It's crazy. So yeah, journalists don't behave either. I have seen so much bad behavior amongst journalists. And yeah, just saying. So to your point of your comment there, journalists are sometimes horrible too. I always do my best to behave the best way I can and be polite and nice to people, which I've talked about a lot here on my channel. And Oscar's here too. He wanted to say thanks for watching, and if you haven't subscribed yet, please do and push that notification button so you don't ever miss an episode of Floss and Talk. Right, Oscar? Please keep sending Oscar love and leaving your comments. I read them all, and yeah, I'll see you in my next episode. Ciao. Say bye, Oscar. Bye. Are you burping?